countries, has 174,000 members, and we deliver software to their members. So that's what we do. Yep.
California recently upheld Proposition 8, and
yep.
I was wondering, how would you go about protecting the institution of marriage?
I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I'm very clear in that. And I think that we have a right to preserve what that means to us and our families. That said, and this is probably the more controversial part, I have supported in the past extending employment benefits to domestic partners. And the reason I did that, we did that in the city of Aurora. The reason I did that is because I thought it was right for the employee. It wasn't about whether I agree with the lifestyle. It was about the simple fact that two people choose to be together, whether I agree with it or not. And that when it comes to their employment, should their partner have access to their employment benefits? Absolutely, in my opinion. So I supported that. And I think that there are areas where Republicans can be reasonable and find common ground, where we can say we can still preserve the institution of marriage and what that means to our families, keeping it between a man and a woman, while allowing simple things like extending employment benefits to domestic partners. So I will stand up to preserve marriage between a man and a woman. And that's just how I was raised. I believe it to be right. And it's not a matter of me making a judgment on other people, but I do believe that it's already been defined and that we have a right to preserve that. Yes.
Councilman, one of the more controversial issues down here has been Indian Canyon and Riverside, and whether or not the Army should be allowed to proceed in expanding that land. Have you taken a position on that?
I have not taken a position on that. I did read recently that it was about Indian Canyon. He asked me if I had taken a position on the matter. I haven't, is the answer. But it is certainly an issue that I would be very torn over, because I do have such an affinity for our military and the need to ensure they have the proper training and the ability to prepare to go to war or to whatever conflicts we may need them to enter into. That said, being a Republican, I believe in property rights and what that means to the individual. So I haven't taken a position on that, but that's one that I'm monitoring very closely. So thank you for the question. Yep.
About the card check or the Employee Free Choice Act?
Yeah. I don't like it. But to expand upon it, I co-authored the Colorado Right to Work Amendment. You guys probably remember that, or maybe you don't. We have a few blank stares. That was the amendment that would have prohibited anybody being forced to be part of a labor union against their will. In other words, as a condition of employment. I thought that was wrong. I thought it violates individual liberty, and I thought it was bad for business. So labor unions don't like me too much. I tell them I don't dislike them, it's just they don't like me. Quick story on that before I tell you a little more about EPSCO. So last year I co-authored the Colorado Right to Work. We raised about $5 million for it. Labor unions brought in about $26 million to fight it. They won. They ran these commercials. They filed 4 lawsuits against me, 1 ethics complaint, 2 rounds of negative commercials that they ran statewide. I was just a little old city council. You would have thought I was running for the United States Senate. In one of the commercials, they have me on the dollar bill, as if I'm on the tape. You know, they're trying to imply I'm on the tape on this dollar bill. And I was over in Shanghai on a Global Series conference that Harvard University invited me to. And while I was out there, my wife sent me an email that said, "We're sorry about these bad commercials that are running around you around. We're with you, we love you." And I'm like, what is this about? So she sent me the link, I checked it out, and I called at home, we talked through it. And my oldest son came back to the phone. He said, "Dad, I want to ask you something." I said, "Sure." He said, "Are you going to be on the dollar bill?" I said, "You never know." But EPSCO, I think, is really extremely poor policy for a couple reasons. One, any type of legislation that would do away with a worker's right to have a private ballot, I think is bad policy. It makes it optional. In other words, you're going to do away with it. So that's one thing that I think is bad about EPSCO. The other thing is the binding arbitration provision, where it allows a federal arbitrator to come into a business and basically divide up the baby. So if a business that has a collective bargaining agreement with the labor union comes to an impasse and they can't agree on a contract, basically the labor union has no incentive to settle because a federal arbiter can come in and split it up. So from a business standpoint, it's extremely poor form. It puts you in a heck of a situation between a rock and a hard place. And the example I like to use is actually in the public sector. Out in Aurora, I'm not sure what the case is in Colorado Springs, but out in Aurora, charter. Whenever we cannot come to terms with our police and fire union, if we can't sell it, we go to binding arbitration. And so what happened is last year in 2008, we saw the economy sliding down. We said, you know, no pay increases next year. We can't afford it. The labor unions wanted 4%. We said no. Well, what happened is they stood firm, we stood firm, and ultimately they said, well, we'll just go to let it go to impasse and let our mediator come in and settle it. But what happened was the council, instead of letting it go to arbitration, said, you know what, we don't want them to come in and split up the baby. We'll just give you 2%. And what I voted against it, by the way. But what ultimately happened is we gave them that pay increase. Fast forward to 2009, the economy is still in decline. We just recently had to cut about $8.5 million. It looks like we're going to have to cut a lot more here over the next few months. We did cut $8.5 million back in January or February. $5 million of that was associated with labor. $5 million. So it put us in a situation where we had to make a decision that we knew was bad for our organization, for our employees, and ultimately for our citizens. So we cut services, we laid people off, all because of that provision. So if you can contrast that with the private sector. If you're a small business or a businessman trying to make the right decisions to keep your business afloat, and you're forced with having to have a federal arbitrator come in and divide up the baby, it can very well ruin your business. And so that's why I believe EFCA is extremely poor policy. Yep.
Would you support giving more, if you're a senator, would you support to give more powers to the executive branch, such as a joint resolution 114, which was to give authority to the president to declare war in Iraq instead of having Congress declare war, such as in Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 11. So would you give more executive power to the president in that form?
Let me double check. I got the Constitution here. I want to make sure you're right. I do actually carry this on me all the time. I like to remember this founding document.
Good. More people.
No, I would not vote to give the president more powers. I believe that power is properly in the Congress, and I would not seek to give it to the president.
So did you support the war in Iraq then?
Well, obviously I wasn't in the United States Congress.
Yeah, right, I mean, personally.
Yeah, but at the time, I certainly believe that we had information and data that supported the reasons for doing what was done.
No, I don't contest
Sure.
going after our enemies.
Sure.
What I contest is that Congress have given up the prerogative to declare war and given up the powers to the president to declare war.
Well, they should be. I believe it's properly in Congress. And so, that's the way it should be, and that's the way I think it ought to stay. So, what else? So I know someone else wants to speak, and so I don't want to take up all the time. Any other questions?
How, are you able to stick around for a little bit?
Yeah, I will.
Still on me?
Yeah. I was doing some time.
No, hold on.
You okay?
You can throw it away.
Yeah, I can ask a bit more. I have some envelopes back here. If anybody would like to support us, I'd love to have your support. I have some cards as well where you can get access to our website. But for those who don't, I want to make sure I give it to you. It's pretty easy to remember. It's just Frazier for Colorado.com. That's with a Z, F-R-A-Z-I-E-R.